Out of the desert and into the mountains, they've battled snakes and now thin air as the Braves' adventure through the NL West continues. Back in for another battery-powered TV. Cory McCartney along with Grant McAuley, and it all sounds like a summer blockbuster, doesn't it, Grant? But here's the plot so far. After watching a 4-run lead in the best of Matt Olson slip away in extra innings and against the Diamondbacks, the Braves have a team meeting. Then they bounce back by beating Arizona and open up the Rockies series with an offensive showcase with Michael Bay level action here. 13 runs, 18 hits. Nonetheless, 9 games back in the East, and the search for consistency continues.
It does. I'm going to take it a different direction, though. I know you want to go summer blockbuster. I'm going to call this the Fellowship of the Ring, because these guys won it all last year, and they really haven't played up to the capabilities of a club that should be defending that title thus far. So, yeah, they're wandering through the desert. They're climbing mountains. It sounds like an epic of some sort, but what the Braves need to find at the end of whatever rainbow they're looking for is that consistency. And, of course, it is those victories. I think we got a little bit of a taste of that in the opener against Colorado, and, of course, the finale out in Arizona. This is a club that has an offense that can be dangerous, but it simply hasn't been dangerous enough in the 2022 season to follow up on its success in the second half of 2021 and that magical run through October. There is time, but we can't just be sitting around talking about it's early when we've already turned the calendar to the month of June. We're past that Memorial Day checkpoint. It's time for the Braves to dig down, find that consistency, and start winning series, not just winning games, but winning series if they want to make a serious run at the NL East, or at the very least, a playoff spot this year.
Yeah, now you've got me like wondering plot wise I'm casting the Fellowship of the Rings now. Is it Frodo and Sam? Is that Albies and Acuna, wandering? I don't know. And is Snick or Gandalf? I'm going to get off on a really weird tangent here, so I don't want to go down this road. But on the topic of Ozzie Albies, between 2018 and 2021, no second baseman had hit more home runs than he did, including a 30-homer 2021 that saw him win a second Silver Slugger. The last time Ozzie Albies hit a home run was on April 24th, when we were way back when everyone was celebrating the fact that Miguel Cabrera just got to 3,000 hits. It's now 35 games, which is the longest drought of his career, surpassing the 32-game drought that he had in 2019. Still, I think the question right now is, what is going on?
I don't really know the answer to that question, other than I think that I have noticed lately a much better approach to really grind out some at-bats, which is something I always wanted to see be a hallmark of his game, to not just swing at everything because it's close, but to swing at pitches that are hittable, and also to spoil pitches in order to extend at-bats. I think that's just the great hitters, I feel like, do a lot of that, at least the ones that are toward the top of the order, or difference maker type guys that have the kind of bat on ball ability and the speed ability that Ozzie Albies has. It seems like it would all be part of his game. Now, I will say, as we looked at the opener against Colorado, Albies' home run drought almost ended, but not even the thin air of Colorado would let that ball get out over the center field wall. But regardless, I've noticed the quality of the bats improving, and I think it's always great to have that consistent approach regardless of that outcome, that you just feel like if he does get on a home run binge, that it's not going to send him into a 3 or 4 week bender of at bats where perhaps his swing has gotten bigger than it needs to be. I feel like he's gotten back to the essence of Ozzie Albies, and those home runs are going to come. Those doubles are going to come. Some triples are going to come with it, and he's going to be the player that we've seen over the past few years. It's just been a rough ride for him, but he's not alone in this Braves lineup. A lot of guys have been trying to kind of navigate through a slump and find themselves, or find a way to get back to themselves and produce the way that we expect them to play and the way that they expect to play.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Thursday's, outing against the Rockies was big for him. A couple of hits, a double. But since that last bomb, he's at 68 weighted run created plus, a 603 OPS. I think kind of most perplexing, and you mentioned the quality of the at-bats have gotten better, but it's been some extreme drops year over year in terms of his hard hit profile. He has a 12% dip in hard hit rate, a 5% drop in barrel rate. On top of all that, pitchers are feeding him the highest amount of pitches outside of the zone at any point in his career, and he's swinging at them at the highest rate of any point in his career. And I think, if anything, with Albies, you can always go back to the fact that, from the right side of the plate against lefties, this guy is going to put it all together. But that OPS is down nearly 250 points from a year ago. So certainly, you mentioned that the quality of things seem to be getting better. he's just got to be able to put together a few games of this, because at this point, I mean, these are not the numbers that we're used to seeing out of Ozzie Albies.
No, they're not. And I don't want to linger too long because I feel like his struggles are kind of symptomatic of larger lineup struggles. But we were talking not long ago about the fact that I think he was down almost 15% as far as hard hit rate year over year, not long ago. And the barrel percentage, I think, was 6% as opposed to the 5 that you were just talking about. So I think there have been, moderate early returns with what has felt like a better approach at the plate. But you're absolutely right about pitchers figuring out, hey, we just have to get it close and somewhere around there. And he may get himself out. And that's something that only Ozzie Albies will be able to fix. But if he's able to improve his approach and draw some of those walks, and it has felt like the at-bats, again, have been better lately, that bodes well. That's a trend that I think will turn around, will correct itself, and we'll find Ozzie Albies back to being the kind of hitter that he was in 2019 when he really put everything together, and the kind of hitter that he's shown that he can be even in a 2021 season where the power was almost surprising. I'm not saying he's going to hit 30 home runs every year, but I'm certainly not going to rule it out. But with his approach lately, it's just felt like he's helping pitchers to get him out, and that's something that's got to change, at least in the overall of 2022. So let me correct that. Lately, it's looked a little bit better than it did over, say, the first 5 or 6 weeks.
Well, certainly someone who's having no problems whatsoever at the plate is William Contreras, and Grant is getting to the point where the Braves may not be able to afford to keep this guy out of the lineup. Contreras was in at catcher in the series finale against the Diamondbacks. Travis d'Arnaud got a day off. Contreras had 3 hits. He has an OPS over 1,100 in his last 19 games with 7 homers, 5 doubles. There seems to just be a few options here. You either make it a bigger split with Travis d'Arnaud, though that becomes troublesome with d'Arnaud putting on the displays like he did Thursday in Colorado with 3 hits, 2 homers, 6 RBIs against the Rockies. You could get Contreras more time at DH. You could put him in the outfield where he's played 1 game and left. Of course, everything's complicated there with Ronald Acuna Jr. being in the field means Marcell Ozuna's at DH. If Ozuna's in the field, that means Acuna's at DH. Duvall's struggling, and with Michael Harris the second on the roster, they don't have to rely on Duvall in center. But it just seems like every instance that you have of trying to find a way to get William Contreras more ABs, there's just a hurdle in trying to figure out how to piece this puzzle all together.
The linchpin of all of this is getting Ronald Acuna Jr. to be the regular right fielder again. And the Braves are, I think, rightfully cautious about the different aches and pains that he's had in his return. When he's on the field, he's absolutely been the player that we remember. He's going to do the things that Ronald Acuna Jr. does, but they do have to be, I think, still a little bit cautious, particularly if he's coming in with just even general soreness, just whether it's, from a hard slide, whether it's from running hard in the outfield, running the bases hard. I know that they're trying to get him to throttle it back a little bit and turn it on when he needs to, and not necessarily, run through a brick wall just to, show that he can. But it's hard to rewire a player like that. And I've said, and I think we agree on this, I don't want to spend a lot of time under the hood trying to change what makes Ronald Acuna Jr. Ronald Acuna Jr. But in the short term, maybe discretion is the better part of valor. We'll see how it all plays as Acuna tries to stay on the field every single day. But you mentioned, how do we get at bats to William Contreras? The simple answer to that is you have Ronald in right field. You can DH Marcell. You can put William Contreras in left field some. If you trust that, you could also give him, he's going to get starts behind the plate. You're not trying to run Travis d'Arnaud into the ground. You can also use Travis d'Arnaud as a DH on some days when William is catching, if you want to keep that bat in the lineup. But it's hard to manage, I think, 162 games between a couple of catchers, particularly when one is expected to catch about 2/3 to 75% of the games that you're going to play throughout the year. We know what that position means to the Braves because we saw how they had to wander through the desert very literally in 2021 to try to find answers after Travis d'Arnaud got hurt. This is a place where they've got more than one answer, and that's a good place to be in, but it's kind of a quandary because of the outfield being in the position it is in, where Marcell Ozuna needs to play as little left field as possible from a defensive standpoint, but you've got to have Ronald Acuna Jr. back out there to open up the DH spot, to even think about giving William Contreras a starter 2 or 3 in left field. Because if he's hitting, all due respect to Adam Duvall, I don't think you can continue to allow somebody to hit through what has now become a 2-month slow start or slump to begin the year. You've got to go with your hottest bats if you're serious about winning games. And if you're serious about doing that, you may have to get creative to get William Contreras in there. But you did bring up Michael Harris. It is, that I think is one of the ways that that the Braves are serious about changing the perspective of what they hoped to get out of certain players like Adam Duvall. They realized that they had to make a change there and get somebody else out there to play center field on a regular basis and see if that bat can play at the big league level. And thus far, the early results are pretty encouraging on both sides.
Yeah, let's get a little bit further into Michael Harris a second here. We're just almost a week into the experience here with him. The Braves' #1 prospect, having played every game in center field since his arrival. He's had now 6 hits through 22 plate appearances, with at least 1 in 3 straight games. That's included a double in each of the last 2 games. Had a 3-hit day versus the Rockies on Thursday. Harris has also played some premier defense. He showcased a sprint speed that's elite at 29 feet per second, which is in the 93rd percentile already. That puts him in that Byron Buxton range. The bat's coming around. The overall product, Grant, it's been exactly what I think you expected to see out of Michael Harris.
Yeah, and just talking to Michael and obviously being able to watch him play and hearing the way that everyone talked about him and just watching highlights even, you could just tell that this was a guy that the well-rounded, the overall, the all-around game was going to play at the big league level. The question the Braves had to ask was, is now the time? And they got to the point where about a week ago, they felt like the time had to be now because he was ready for that challenge. They felt like he was going to be up to the task. And thus far, he has proved him right. He doesn't seem overmatched at the plate. Yeah, there's going to be some strikeouts. That welcome to baseball in 2022. But overall, the line drive swing is there. The way he runs the bases is something that's going to help the Braves out because being able to get a fast hitter like that on base in front of Ronald Acuna Jr., in front of Dansby Swanson, Ozzie Albies, and ultimately you get to the big thumpers with Austin Riley and Matt Olson and Marcell Ozuna in the middle of the order. This is where the Braves start to feel a little bit more like the club that they've been over the past few years. And they needed somebody to answer this call and to help them out specifically in center field, not because of the defense of Adam Duvall, but because offensively speaking, again, Duvall has not been able to find any consistency whatsoever. And I just don't feel like you could continue to say, this is the answer to our center field question. The Braves went out and elevated a top prospect and skipped AAA altogether. But Corey, I don't think, and from talking to him again and hearing from him and watching the way he plays this game, that any of this is overwhelming to him. Is it a challenge? Sure. But is he up to that challenge? I think the answer is yes.
The only time he's really looked overmatched at the plate was in his first game against Sandy Alcantara, and he got, just struggled with Alcantara's breaking ball, but a lot of guys are struggling with that pitch this season. Yeah, he's been fantastic. Harris primarily hit third in the minors. Snicker has penciled him in at 9 in all of his games so far, obviously just to get him acclimated. You and I have talked about this before. He profiles as that #2 hitter long-term behind Acuna, those high on-base skills, some serious speed. I mean, that could end up being a really dynamic top of the order if that's where he ends up once things kind of get netted out and he gets more acclimated to the bigs.
It could be, and we'll keep it pretty short here because we don't know when that change is going to happen. But I do like the spot he's in now from the perspective of he doesn't have a lot of pressure on him. He's not having to bat in front of the pitcher, so you don't have to worry about him just getting junk all season long. You've got him hitting in front of Ronald Acuna Jr. And so as he's able to perform, depending on kind of, I think, the highs and lows, peaks and valleys of the season, you got Dansby Swanson hitting up toward the top of the order now. Saying that a month ago, people might have been like, are we sure we want to be giving Dansby all those plate appearances? Well, the last month bears out that Dansby should be hitting second or toward the top of the order whenever you've got a chance to put him up there. And the Braves have made that switch. And I think it's one of the things that's helped this lineup really start to turn the corner is you've got to have a bunch of guys getting hot. And the Braves have had that. Adding Harris to that, I think only helps because it gives an infusion of speed and excitement to the lineup that makes the lineup longer, which is, the Braves are always trying to find a way to get 1 through 9 as strong as they can. And then having some other guys return to form. We've got Austin Riley on an 11-game hitting streak. You got Matt Olson having a big game and starting to show some real signs of life and still racking up doubles. And he very nearly had a couple in that opener against the Rockies series if he wasn't hitting them right at the first baseman guarding the line. But as you start to get a lot of guys rolling, that's when this lineup starts to become dangerous. We just haven't seen that happen enough this season to make you feel like, okay, the Braves have hit their stride and now they're going to get on their run.
Hey, the previous regime felt that Dansby Swanson was a long-term #2 hitter. It just took a little while to get there, but he's finally doing that and producing in that spot. After Thursday's offensive eruption, the Braves continue their 4-game series against the Rockies throughout the weekend. Max Fried getting a ball on Friday, followed by Spencer Strider on Saturday and Charlie Morton on Sunday. 2 things to watch in that Saturday matchup. The Rockies, absolutely incredible City Connect uniforms that I love with the mountains and the evergreen trees meant to look like the state's license plate. And I'm interested to see how Spencer Strider deals with pitching in Coors. To no one's surprise, the Rockies have the highest home batting average, have the 2nd most runs at home, and the 6th most home runs. Strider has allowed 1 home run this season, and opponents are hitting a mere 175 against his 4-seamer. I think that matchup, Grant, that figures to be a lot of fun on Saturday.
Yeah, it looks like power versus power. And as we saw with Spencer Strider's start that he got against Arizona, that line is deceptive as to how he pitched. There was an inning where, he was dealing with at least 5 outs being given to Arizona with plays not being made behind him. If that kind of thing doesn't happen, and then there was another play in a separate inning, so it just kind of felt like that component wasn't there. But if the defense is locked in behind him and he's able to go out and execute the way that he has in his multi-inning outings and the way he did against Arizona more times than not, I think Spencer Strider is going to have a chance to win a baseball game for the Atlanta Braves or to help them win a baseball game. But you're right. When it comes to the Rockies and Coors Field, there's kind of an aura about that. So I don't know if Spencer Strider's been reading any of the lore of the Blake Street Bombers, or maybe saw the Rockies play in those turn ahead the clock uniforms that are going to be strangely a lot like those City Connect uniforms. But it may not be Galarraga, Bichette, Larry Walker, and Ellis Burks that he's facing, but these are guys that can put a hurting on you and put a crooked number up there. Even though the Braves put up 13 runs last night, the Rockies still scored half a dozen themselves and knocked up Ian Anderson for 5 runs. So this can be a challenge, but for Spencer Strider, I feel like it's been, full speed ahead and keeping his eyes on ultimately the focus that it's taken to make him a successful big league pitcher and getting this opportunity to start. And I don't think that he's going to go in there with anything other than the same focus as he's had all season long.
He's got that developing slider, and I think that's going to be interesting because guys like Peter Moylan and Paul Bird have told me, as hard as it is to get consistent spin, and you have to overcompensate to get that spin when you're in Denver, it also impacts you on your next start after that too, because of the recovery coming out of there is one of the most difficult parts. Also, I feel like the Rockies pitching staff really needs a support group, because between the doubleheader that they had against the Marlins on Wednesday and the first game against the Braves, they give up 39 runs on 51 hits. So I'll save you the math there. That's a 10.61 ERA over that span. That's just yikes territory. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button here on Battery Power YouTube channel and turn on notifications to get an alert each and every time that we drop a new episode. And you can also find Grant and myself on Sundays from 7 p.m. on 92.9 The Game on From the Diamond. So give us a listen, tell a friend, all those fun things. For now, appreciate you joining us. I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.